Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Cocken, and I'm the manager of the Petaluma Regional Library and one of the founding partners of LumaCon. Welcome to the 7th annual LumaCon. You're here at the 7th annual LumaCon, and you were at Christopher Melville's presentation. Just a note that if you want to listen to this presentation in Spanish, there is a place for you to go for interpretation. Here's the page right here, and you need to click on interpretation in the bottom right corner of your page. So just to let you know, so this presentation is LARPing during quarantine. And if some of you don't know what LARPing is, I'm going to let you know that Christopher Melville is the expert, and he's going to talk to you now. Thank you and welcome, Christopher. Welcome, everybody. As I said, this is a class on LARPing in quarantine. And when it comes to LARPing in quarantine, I've done a lot. Let me tell you, I've done a lot of LARP, first of all. Many of you may know that. I've been LARPing for over 20 years professionally, and I've also been a teacher for many years too, and there's a lot to do with LARP, a lot to do with gaming, and a lot to do with how to do LARP type of activities, even online. And I've continued to do LARP in different formats, even during the pandemic and through quarantine, and different various formats, different ways of doing it. So today's presentation is a lot about that. It's about different ways that you can do a LARP programs, your own LARP with your friends, and do it safely, you know, during quarantine. It has a lot of different variations. You should know that some of them are all completely online. Other variations you'll hear about are types that we've done when the COVID levels have been low enough that we've been able to do small group gatherings. Obviously not right now. So I'll be telling you about all those different types, giving you lots of different tools for how to make your gaming experiences more lively and fun. Music is also, of course, a good use for that. If you have ways to bring in music into your LARPing, I recommend it. You don't have to be able to play an instrument to do that, but it can definitely add to the story that you're telling and definitely add to the feeling of your LARPing. Normally when we're at the park, we don't really get to do that. And so one of the nice things about having a LARP that's available online is you can bring in music into it. So some of you may know that I play a character called LARing. And he doesn't act like me, he doesn't talk like me, but he does play the harp. And when I play him, you know, I use the harp at my LARP events. And he would tell you that there's a lot to learn when you're LARPing. See, there's a lot to do in the world. If you're trying to find your way in the world, there's lots of places you can go, lots of people you can see, but when you're in elephant country, you have to follow the elephant ways, and there's not much you can do other than to follow the path before you, seek what's not easily found, and don't give up too easily, or you'll find yourself regretting your decisions. At least that's what LAR would say. All right, I'll put that down for a minute so I can get to some of our businessy stuff. So first of all, this class is not just about me talking about LARP. If that's all I wanted to do, I would just post a video of me talking about LARP, and then you guys could just watch it whenever you wanted to, right? That would be what we do. But since this is a class, the whole point is to actually have you guys engage and talk to me, because otherwise you could just watch a video at any time. But what you can't do in a normal watching a video is ask the video questions. You can't ask it, you can't say, hey, what about this? And what do I do with this situation? And what do you think about this? And how do I solve that? That's the really valuable thing I feel like from a class. So some stuff I'm going to present at the beginning here, and it's really just information. Don't be too attached to getting all the information, because you can always read it later. You know, it's not something you have to read through right now. And as a teacher, I know that whenever a teacher gives a handout, one of the hardest things to do is to not read that handout. And so I know that when once I hand this out, I will, you know, walk you through it. So because I expect you to like look over it, I know you're going to want to. So feel free, but just don't feel like it's okay. It's a problem if you want to look over things more. And if you miss something, also don't worry about it. This is really a question and answer situation that we're going to go into. All right, so I'm going to start with getting into the chat here. Hopefully, you all know how to get to the chat. And I'm posting a LumaCon Google Doc 2021, and I'm also going to screen share it. So if you can't get to that that Google Doc, you can just also look at my screen share if you want to do that. So if you're having trouble, that's no problem. But I just posted it, and if you get onto the Google Doc, you can see it now. If you can't, I'll go ahead and screen share it over, and then you should be able to see what I'm showing people. All right, so I'm screen sharing now. All right, so you should be seeing this this doc right here. Let me open this up here so I can see you guys too. I got my two screens going here. Another thing about LARPing when you're when you're LARPing during pandemic, having multiple screens is very helpful. Very helpful. All right, so so this doc right here has a whole bunch of resources for you guys, tons of them if you want to do LARPing during the pandemic, and a whole bunch of resources for how to do that. I'll be going over each of them just briefly, like I said, and then we're going to get to lots of questions and answers sections. I am going to talk a little bit about making LARP, items, but I have a bunch of videos up, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because again, you could just go watch a video about that. What I mostly want to do is spend time actually answering questions you might have about making things. There's a video actually in this link on this Google Doc about making these exact swords right here. I also talk about making other things. If you want to make, if you want to make some shields, ways you can make some shields really easily out of a piece of sled, and just cutting holes in it and so on. So we can talk about that, but mostly I want to focus on how to do LARP when you're in a pandemic. So first of all, the first link you're going to see there is the Fanware website. If you go there, you can usually track your way around to other things. But the second one there, you're going to see right about here, is the 2020 revised tabletop Fanware battle system. So that link, if you want to explore it a bit more, what you'll find is that we use Roll20 a lot to do our LARPing and online. So I can go over here to my Roll20 tab really quick, and you can see that we use a lot of Roll20. Some of you may be familiar with Roll20, but this is the Roll20 that I use to do a lot of my LARP encounters. And you can use all kinds of cool maps. And if you're not that familiar with Roll20, get familiar with Roll20. It's actually really useful, really helpful. There's a lot you can do with it. One of the coolest things, which you'll see in that little in that link that I was telling you about on the revised 2020 tabletop system, we use a D20 system, like you would with normal D&D kind of stuff. But one of the things that we do that's very different than D&D is we use decks of cards. So if you look over here, you'll see that I've got these two decks of cards set up right here. There's an attack deck and a defense deck. And what those do is they simulate much more like the kind of LARP that we actually play. If you check out, if you're familiar with the LARP rulebook, and if you've read it, you know that we use a system of zones, like where you hit people matters. It's not just whether you hit somebody, where you hit them actually matters a lot. So one of the things that I use for that are these decks of cards. So for example, if I was to deal, say, 4 cards, I'm going to get 4 cards for my hand here. You'll see that I can open up my hand down here, and you'll see that I've got various cards in my hand. I've got Perfect Shot. I've got Quick Shot. That's only going to hit in zone 0, though, so that's got to be very situational. Cut, which is a pretty weak attack, but I do have an epic move, which is really nice, right? So this allows me to then sort of plan out my my combat so that I don't actually have to just completely be RNG, right? I'm not just completely using dice constantly. I'm actually able to sort of plan out when to make the really big attacks that I'm trying to make on things that we're encountering, and when to sort of save, like, to use something weak because it doesn't matter. Like if I was using a fireball or something, I would use like a cut because it doesn't really matter where it hits. But if I'm using like, a sleigh, then I'm gonna use a perfect shot or an epic move for sure because it's got to hit in the middle. We also use a defense deck. So if you look here, I'll draw some of these. You can set your hand size to whatever you'd like to. I mean, I use a hand size of 5 cards, but if you're looking at this over here, you'll see that the defense deck has a bunch of cards in it too. It's got cards like Jump Back, where you play that to have your character jump back in the encounter and then not get hit. perfect block, which is the answer appearing card to the perfect shot. So if somebody tries to hit you with a perfect shot, if you happen to have a perfect block, you negate their attack. So the blue cards basically are cancels for the red cards or other attacks. It makes for a much more dynamic kind of combat, much more like LARP, like live action role playing, right? So, so this is a much system that I really enjoy in terms because there is responses to things. It isn't simply I'm hit, I'm down, or I'm not. So that's one of my recommendations for the for if you're going to make if you're going to do Roll20, I recommend that you use the card system. The cards are all in this link right here in the revised 2020 tabletop system. They're all there. You can just copy them over and use them if you know the FanWorks game system, or you can just use cards in your own LARPing. If you're trying to figure out how to do live action stuff and you want to make it more dynamic, think about using decks of cards. They really change the way strategy works from just being I roll a dice to I actually have choices of what to do, and that creates much more complex decision making. Okay, so moving on to our the 2018 rulebook is there if you wanted to look it up and know about FanWar LARP. The 2020 updated classes are there if you're wondering what updated classes are like. You could see them there. The website link is there. There's also character sheets that you can download and have people fill out, from their houses, and then they could fill up everything they need. I recommend that you do that too if you're going to do online LARPing. That you do you have people use online, you use character sheets of some type. We usually use Google Docs, which I'll show you in a minute. This one is actually one you're looking at. As you get to the bottom, you'll see some examples of characters and how we've been tracking character sheets and that sort of thing. There is a basic, the basic 5 rules of FanWar LARP video is also on here, where it takes you through the basic, how do you do basic LARPing and all, and what's, how do you tag somebody, how do you heal somebody, how do you do that kind of stuff. All those things are things that excellent. All those things are things that you can use if you wanted to figure out what how to have your encounters written better and what the basic system is. If you don't know what LARPing is at all, then you might want to start there. I have my code of conduct for LARP up here, which is just about like how we treat each other and our rules for how we all, how we get along, how we resolve problems. If you have a problem with another person or you're having a difficulty, how do you solve that? We have a whole system for the ways that we respect each other and making sure that we're all having a good time. And if we aren't, that we solve it in an appropriate way. You can see that I have a Roll20 link posted there where I say you can post your Roll20 link there, insert your own link, and then you can use Roll20. Now, but Roll20 isn't the only way to go. I mean, there's also, some people just use things like Zoom, like this right here. And we would they just do LARPing through Zoom, and they use just, dice rollers. But what's nice about Roll20 is that it allows everybody to see the dice you rolled and have a universal agreed upon rolls that were made, as opposed to somebody rolling a dice and then having to show you on your screen and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so does anybody have any questions at this point? We're about 15 minutes in. So I'm going to move down into what's called outside assignments, which are where you start to get moving around. Because ultimately what I've talked about so far is really just, more like a tabletop gaming with LARP rules. What I'm going to talk about next is where LARP starts to kind of invade tabletop gaming. And so I want to talk about that in a minute, but does anybody have any questions first? If you do, just make sure you unmute and then say, I have a question about this before I go on. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Let me make sure I got my chat up. There we go. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions there, so I will continue on. I'm scrolling down here, and if you're on the doc, you can, of course, go wherever you want on it, but where it says magic items, potions, and codes, you'll see that it says often in LARP we use a lot of cards for things. Like I use these magic item cards. They usually get folded in half. You unfold them to figure out what they do. They all have different abilities, and I write them all out onto what they do so that people can carry them around in the field and know what their abilities are. Now, since we're online, that's not as critical. You can just photo them and then send them to people. But this is a place to store them. So basically, I post them, and you'll see at the bottom of this doc some examples of some magic items that people have found, or some ways to do magic items that you could use that people can use, and post them so everybody knows what they do. You can use a phone or something to do that, to post your items. So outside assignments, this is where we get right back into what I would call real LARPing, as opposed to tabletop LARPing. Outside assignments are basically tasks that you ask your LARPers to do that are related to LARP, and the best you can do during a pandemic. there's a video which tells you how to make these swords, the basic, old standard, I call it. Yep, I can see you got one there, Aaron. It's got, it's got nice, it's really soft. They're really safe. They don't hurt at all. They're almost like getting hit with a balloon. Very, very soft, very, very safe. These you can make. They're also very cheap to make. You just need bamboo. You don't need a lot of expensive resources. And since we're all stuck inside, we're mostly inside, it's nice to be able to craft things. And so here's bamboo with, it's got these rubber tips on the ends that are made out of like a mouse pad kind of a foam or a yoga mat type of foam. And then once that's padded up, then you can start building your sword on it. The videos are all there, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the videos. There's a bunch of them if you want to know what they do. There's also ways that you can make all of the different little packets. This is just crushed walnut shell that you would get at a store for like the stuff you put inside of the bedding for lizards and things. You can also use birdseed, but a lot of parks don't like it if you're throwing birdseed around. That can be problematic because it'll sprout. Whereas this won't sprout; it's just crushed walnut shell. So this is what more recommended for uses in parks and things. These are really easy to make. LARP has been low tech for forever. I mean, it's part of the goal is that it's been low tech. We've never wanted it to be too high tech because the whole point is this is a game for everyone. This is a game for everybody to be able to do and not be, you can only do it if you have all these complex things. It's like, no, actually you could just build it really easily. So you can make your own spells out of socks and pieces of cloth. That's the whole idea. So that's real easy. And if you want to make shields, like I said before, you can just take like this right here. It's actually a bigger shield that was initially, a much bigger piece. And then we just cut it in half into two smaller shields, right? So this was a sled. These are super easy to make because they're just solid foam. You can then put straps, you can cut holes inside of them and put a strap in there, through there, and then, or even just a piece of rope, and then you'll get a shield. So these are fun to make. You can decorate them, put tape on them, all that. I'm not going to these. Now, if you want to go super low tech, you can use just a fun noodle cut in half, and just put a couple of these. And then you would be able to, fence with these if you don't want to have to build too much. Okay. So those are all different options for how to do actual combat. But if you're looking at this part, we're talking about outside assignments. What that means is that as the GM, will assign my players assignments that they have to do that take them outside, that are designed to get you to go do things that are more LARP-like instead of sitting in front of your computer all day, right? And so if you look at these, the first one, fight an ogre. Right, fighting an ogre. So how it works, and it explains kind of how to do this activity where someone plays an ogre, usually an older sibling or a younger sibling or a parent, somebody in your household. And maybe you have somebody that you're quarantining with, and that person plays the ogre. And then you play the character trying to fight the ogre, and they have to follow the rules of playing the ogre, which means they have to be slow. They can only walk, but they get 5 hits, right? And you have to try to defeat them with having only 1 hit, but being fast. And this is a very classic kind of lineup. And you then just keep track of your score. How many times can you fight this person? How many times do you beat them? How many times do they beat you? And you track that score down at the bottom. And that gives you something like a ratio, like a stat, basically. Once you've established that stat, the GM then can use that stat to determine if you are actually if you are actually how skilled you are, and you'll get bonuses. I can see that some people need to get into the meeting, but I think that's not on me to do. I think that's actually on Karen's going to handle that. So I'll have Karen handle the letting people in or not. Thanks, Karen. All right, so that gives you a stat. Now, if you look down at the very bottom, I'll scroll down, way down here to characters. These are just some characters that people have, but I've changed the names so that you don't know whose they are, but whatever. But you can see that their scores are sort of recorded here in red. So you can see that like Brian's character is an orc. He starts out dense, but his intelligence goes up as he goes higher. He has a +1 AV. It says ogre challenge +1. So that means he has a +1 basically to his stats because he did the ogre challenge and he scored high enough that he was actually good enough beating an ogre that now whenever he's in combat, his character gets a +1 to all his attacks. The cards he plays are slightly higher. dice rolls are slightly higher. And some GMs just make it where the more of these challenges you do, the more cards in your hand you're getting, right? Your hand size increases. That's another way to simulate that. But it does get you outside and moving and playing these games. There's a whole bunch of games here, and you could just do them also just for fun, because they're just fun games too if you want to. But so there's a bunch of them. Some of them you don't have to have anybody around, like solo target practice. If you're just gaming with your friends online, but you at home have no one who's going to do LARP with you, then you can focus on the ones that say solo on them. There are things like target practice where you make, something you can throw safely. This is just a couple of socks balled together, right? But you could make something else if you wanted to. You could make the actual arrows we use, which are these orange ones like this, right? And you could then, pitch them across and try to get your target practice really good. And if you get really good at target practice, then your character's archery abilities in the game are going to go up, and you're going to be better at taking out targets in the storyline, or attacking people with any missile attack you make. That will give you a bonus, and it explains for you how to do that. There's a lot of other games in here too, like Navigator Ball, which is really about like how to create how to move something across an area without it ever touching the ground. There's kind of rules for it, how long it takes you. Angle Jump, which is just about your character's ability to jump distances. The Bogre Challenge, we call it, because if it's fighting an ogre with a bow, actually all you have is a bow. That can be a lot harder. Getting a little further down, you'll see some other ones that are marked in purple because they're like the second phase. Once you've mastered the first ones, I usually move on to the second ones, right? Which is like Guarded Treasure, Archer versus Giant. And then Art in Nature is one that is a really cool one to do. It requires you to like take photos of cool designs you make in nature. If you want to look up more of this kind of work, you should look up the British sculptor Andy Goldsworthy, who creates these amazing, really cool things out of just using like natural objects. And it's a really awesome thing that you can do during quarantine because you don't need to be around with anybody else, but it can end up being a cool way to cast a spell in your game. So instead of having somebody say, I cast this spell, and the GM's like, okay, that spell works, right? That's kind of boring. Instead, what you do is you say, okay, you're going to cast that spell. All right, well, then go outside and create, a design, something out of art using only flowers and rocks. And you can also only use sticks. Go do that, photo it, and then I'll use the photo as my example as whether or not the spell works. That's way cooler of a kind of gaming than I cast a spell. Oh, I rolled. Your spell works. Okay, great. So and that's much more LARPy too, much more like a live action role play. Mediator chores is another one that's like this. Mediator chores requires you to go around asking people in your house for tasks to do, things to clean up your house, fix up your house, make things better around in your whoever you're living with, cleaning up things. And part of the trick is you can't actually ask them to. Half the time you can ask them what needs to be done, but the other half you have to figure out what needs to be done and then just do it without being asked to do it. And you only get points if you can do the thing, like if you notice there's dishes that need to be washed and then you go wash them without being asked to do those dishes. That's a point that then you can use it with your GM towards mediator skills, which means whenever your character is trying to interact with somebody in the story and they're trying to convince someone of something, your mediator score determines how well you are at convincing people or helping people or making them want to help you. And this is an example of how much you help others. So that translates to LARP. So those are all a bunch of different games you can do. I'll pause here because I'm going kind of fast. And I'll say, do you have any questions that you have about this? And if you want to just unmute for a second and then ask me a question. Aaron, yeah. Aaron, what's your question?
Do you have to be signed up in order to send you like the stuff that we do as tasks?
Well, yeah, you wouldn't send them to me specifically. That's a good question, Aaron. But you wouldn't sign up to send them to me, the things you're doing as tasks, because you would need to be in my you would need to be in my league. Like if I was running a campaign, right, and I was running a bunch of battles or something, and you were in my campaign, you'd signed up for a mission with me. Then yes, you would then be in that doing modules is what I call them. And if you're in that module, then you would send me your stats so that I would know how well you're doing. You can sign up for modules. Different GMs run them. I run several modules. I have sort of time slots throughout the day. I have like a morning slot, I have an afternoon slot, and then I have an evening slot, and people can sign up for those slots and then run missions during those times. And so if you signed up for a slot and you said, hey, I want to run some missions and things and play my character in this slot, then you might sign up for, say, like 1 o'clock to 3:30 is one of the slots I have. Then you sign up for that slot. You'd make your characters, or you'd bring your characters into that. You would then do a lot of these mediator tasks to determine what your stats are. You do those every week, because a lot of them, unless you're doing them constantly, your score goes down. You have to maintain a score with those. But if you do them a lot, right, then your stats go up, and then you're just basically doing better at all the skills in the game. I would then track them in a doc that I keep. Like this doc is just a doc I made for LumaCon, so you guys could see how it works. But if I was running a campaign with you, I would make a doc that's just for that. And then I also might make a Roll20 account that was just for that. So you guys then would just have our characters in there, and you could, we'd have all the things that are in there just for that. So you wouldn't send me your stats for this unless you're working with the GM and running things. Now, you guys might know, you may know people in this meeting right now who obviously are all interested in LARPing. So this is a good opportunity to see who's in this meeting, and then say, hey, do you guys want to get together to do some of these things, right? I mean, maybe not literally together, because that would be dangerous, right? But like to get together online to do some of these things, and do some missions together, have somebody play your GM, have them, send them your stats so they know how you're doing, and run you on a campaign. That's mostly what this class is about, Aaron. So in case you're wondering, you could sign up with me, but the goal of my LARPing is not for me to be the sort of keeper of LARP, and then everybody has to go through me to do LARP. Like, it's not my goal. My goal is to be somebody who shares LARP, which means, hey, here's how to do this. You can all do this. Like, you're all very capable, and you're all, very skilled. So take this stuff and use it. And you find people who's together for whom you can do it with. You could sign up to do it with me, but there's also other people running things. I also have other GMs who run stuff. So, I mean, if you want to get involved in some of other people's campaigns, I do know a bunch of people who are starting a whole bunch of different campaigns, for LARP campaigns anyway. And they do take new players. And so if you go to the Fanware website, you should be able to go to the link that takes you to the online website page, and you should be able to sign up there. Also, usually Wednesday nights from 8 to 9, there's a link I think you can get to there on Discord that allows you we do like a music and song night, and people can come and visit and like hear what's going on in the storyline and hear about campaigns people are planning on doing. So that's information on that, Aaron. Other questions people have? Looking around. Okay, I don't see any more questions there, so I will move forward. So characters, you can see that I posted the characters here. You can see there's there's like Amanda's character, the centaur here. There's this Kelly's elf, and then there's Brian's orc, right? So it tells you a little bit what their items are that they're using. I've written them in here. They have their abilities that are listed, like their backstory abilities, which are listed there, which they roll on a chart and then gets put into their character. But they also have their mod or their modification. We in LARP, we have a system of 2 pieces that make up your character. One is completely out of your control, other than you get to choose the chart you roll on. You roll on a chart, and that determines your character's backstory. And that's basically something you didn't get to decide about your character. It's a power you have and a flaw you have that's just you have to live with. But the second part is called your mod, and it's where you modify that, or you sort of change it, or you adjust it to make sense for this particular character. And so you can see that for Brian's character here, he got the Nemesis backstory, which means that some dark heroes killed his family, and now he's out for revenge. And he has adept slay, which means he's very good at killing things for that are in this particular group that he associates as having killed his family, and that's these Morgoth followers. They're part of the Elven pantheon. And so the flaw is that he's frenzied versus to that chosen group, which means he has to kill all of them that he runs into if they oppose him at all. Now that was out of control. He didn't get to choose that. That was just something he has to have. But the other part, the hide and stealth, and that's something he added. He was like, well, I want to be kind of sneaky to be able to do this, and I want to be able to like also be able to move around. And so I approved that he would be able to have hide and stealth, and then he picked the flaws of very obvious while he's not hidden. He's like, if he's not hidden, people can just, he's like the first things that people attack. And he also can't kill any animals because of his association with the elven pantheon. So that kind of gives you an example of how you build a character. And then his equipment is kind of listed just down there. Now, missions, you can do missions lots of different ways. I usually post a list of missions, like you can see kind of here on this page here, that there's a list of missions. These ones are some that are happening in Spireguard right now. The characters then all debate what they want to run. We vote on which mission to do, and we go and do that mission. Now that can be pretty tough for a GM to do. I'm an experienced GM, though. I've been GMing for like 30 years, so I'm pretty good at being able to have characters pick whatever they want to do, and I can plan for all those different missions, right? But if you're a starting game master, then you probably want to do something simpler, which a lot of the other game masters I know, they pick one mission that they want to run, and they just say, hey guys, we're doing this dungeon, or we're doing this, trying to find these bandits. That's the mission. Who wants to go? And then people just sign up and do it. So you don't have to have a big selection of missions. That's just something I do. Just last thing down there below, you can see there's some items that are listed. There's like a universal antidote, instant rope, glow bulbs, and then an amulet that you can, I think that's a light bead amulet. Yeah. That's an example of how I post magic items that people find so that they can look at them. And there's a world map there too, if you wanted to look at it, but that's also on the website. Okay, so that's the doc that's right there. You can see people's scores where it says like target practice 11 steps away, 5 squares. Gives you a sense of how good each of these people's doing on their different abilities and the things they're doing, their outside activities, and how they do all of that. Questions? Does anybody have any questions about what I've gotten about characters and how to like make characters? Riley, it looks like you got that. Oh, Carolyn. Am I going too fast? Okay, I need to slow down a little bit. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so I apologize. I do have a tendency to speed up as I'm going along, and I'll try to slow down a bit so that I'm not leaving people behind. Moving into doing LARP, if you're trying to do LARP safely and you do have some friends you can work with, and you're like, okay, I get how to do it. If we're doing online, you could do a Zoom, right? And you can do Roll20, which if you're looking at the Roll20 here, if you're using Roll20 and Zoom, that's usually how I do LARP online. I don't just use Roll20 because some of the features of the sound and video of Roll20 are not the strongest. So I tend to turn them off. You can do that up in the gear section. If you go up into the gear section of Roll20 and you go down to audio and video, you can disable them so they don't send. And then you can also just mute the whole site by going up here and muting your the entire page, and then it won't make any, or no sound will go through. That way you don't get any feedback through while you're using Zoom and also using Roll20. You can of course use Roll20 if you just want to do that, but I just have found that the sound and video is not ideal for Roll20, and using Zoom or Discord is better. If you're in terms of the actual game system of how we simulate LARP, we actually do LARP online in Roll20 exactly like we would if it was live action. Meaning, people, we obviously have to take turns, so we can't. That's not the same as live action. But in terms of the rules of where if you have to hit somebody on a certain part of their body, that's the same. All the spells do the same thing. The only thing that's different is the turn-based part of it, and that can be very time-consuming, which means we focus a lot on missions that are much more about solving or just finding things, as opposed to actually trying to just fight stuff like we would do more of if we were outside. One of the things we use a lot of is having to find things on maps and having to discover stuff, puzzles, riddles, clues, all that kind of stuff. You can use maps to do that. As you can see on this map, if you look right here, you'll see there's like a little brown square. It kind of blends in. So sometimes if I'm trying to get players to sort of simulate tracking, this is the same thing I would do outdoors. I would put objects out in the field for them to have to track and find. And then you can find the next one, which is right here, and then the next one, which is right here, and they can realize that they're actually, being led somewhere, and then they're trying to get to a certain place. So some of you may have found where the next one is, but if you're looking around, people would move their characters around trying to find this particular spot. So here's Jasper, for example. If he was moving over here trying to find this, and he's moving on this way, he might be looking around for it, and then he might say, "Oh, hey, Chris, I think I found the next one. What's this?" Right? And I would say, "Oh, that's looks like more tracks. You're headed in the right direction," and so on. I use the fog of war a lot. This, the blacked out area. In normal LARP, we don't have a fog of war. I mean, when we're outside running around the park, you don't have a fog of war, but you kind of do because there's trees and things in the way that you can't see past. You're hiding in the bushes, you can't see everything. And so fog of war does kind of simulate that to some degree. So I do recommend it. I think it is useful to do fog of war. But that's up to your GM and how they want to run things. Other questions about using Roll20 in general, like if you have questions about how we use it. Yes, is there a question? Gus, it looks like you have a question. Okay, can you unmute for a minute and I can answer your question.
What is the Shadow of War you're talking about? What does it
do? Which one?
You said that Shadow of War was useless.
Fog of War is useful. Yes, fog of war. So yeah, you said Shadow of War, and I wasn't sure what that was. So the fog of war is this. If I reset it, it makes everything turn sort of gray. Now you can see through it right now because we're in GM mode, which means that you can actually see through it because I'm showing you from what the GM sees. So this is what I see when I'm the GM. I can still see everything, but the players are just seeing a blank screen right now. They just see blackness, nothing at all, until I reveal something. And so if I go up to reveal and then I reveal an area, it'll show them now that's the area they can see. Gus. So now that's all they can see on the screen is just that part. So they might see that one little brown square. So you might be like, well, that was easy, Chris. Like they can see the second one is right here, so like, why do they even need to look for the next one, right? Well, the issue is that even though I can see where these two dots are, Gus, they can't. They don't know where it is. So if they start walking, if Savon starts going this way and heading off, he's like, okay, Chris, I'm going to go check over here. What do I see? Then I can go, all right, well, you're looking around there, you see this tree, and you can see some rocks, but you don't see any more tracks or anything. He's like, all right, well, I guess I better go this other way. Maybe I'll move over here. He's like, oh, what's this, Chris? And I go, that looks like the tracks you're looking for. He's like, okay. All right, well, I'll round some more.
It's like when you it's like you see if you're going in the right direction and you like reveal where the player's going.
Yes, exactly. Very useful for dungeons.
Like they go in a direction and you clear a part so they can see it.
Yeah, for example, like if you were doing a dungeon, like if you're using a dungeon map, let me see, I'll find one for you really quick here. Oh, here we go. All right, so here's a dungeon map we did. And you can see a whole bunch of things in here that they
like a bunch of pen marks.
Yeah, a bunch of pen marks. There were these levers they had to pull that released like water, but there's also acid. And so they realized they were all going to burn up, but if they could release like the water, then it actually like filled up the areas the acid was going to flow into. So then they used it as a countermeasure to keep them all from dying, and blockade different areas. They ran into some slime creatures they really did not want to fight, so they ran away. But see, the black areas are the areas that they never saw, right? So the areas that you can see clearly are the areas that they found out what was there. And so that's those are all areas that they discovered stuff. If they didn't ever went into some of these rooms, and so they don't know what's in there, right? I might know what's in there, but they never figured that out. So good question, Gus. Good question. Other questions? Because this class should be a lot about questions. Ultimately, you guys could watch a video of me talking about LARP. That's easy, but asking me questions is not something you have a lot of opportunity to do. Okay, and again, Carolyn, I apologize if that's too fast for you. I will try to slow down as much as I can. Okay, so moving on to characters in Roll20, some more Roll20 things you should know about. I don't actually have players make character sheets in Roll20 and then like have their own units and all that sort of stuff. If you're familiar with how Roll20 works at all, you can set people's units to be used by certain people. I am more of a person who I like a kind of an old school feel where if we were all sitting around a table and we were all gaming together, there would be lots of units on the board. There'd be like little figures or things, and anyone can move them. I mean, if someone moves them, they move them, right? That's what they choose to do. So I usually set my units, most of my units, to be set to movable by all players. And that means that anybody can move anyone's unit. The only ones they can't really move are the ones I put on that are just the GM's units, right? So I might put those out, and then the rest of them are all ones that are played by the characters. And that means that if your friend is on Zoom and then suddenly their internet cuts out, or they're, it's not really working and they don't have a good connection, we can still move their unit along with us and, get them to go where they need to go. They don't get like left way behind and stuff like that. So it's more polite, I find. It also allows someone to say, I can't see the Roll20 right now. Can you move my character? I'm like, sure, we'll move you around. So I find that to be very helpful. Also with the with Roll20, the way that we indicate all the different sashes and things, this is all in the doc on how to translate my LARPing into tabletop. But like the little red dot you see on Nova here, or Astrid's, the character Astrid, is the sash they would be wearing in LARP. So normally you wear like a red sash if you have half plate mail, or you wear a blue sash if you're wearing full plate mail. And so the little dot means, hey, this is what I'm wearing, so you know what kind of armor I'm in. All right, now I haven't talked a lot about actual LARPing during pandemic, like if you wanted to like really LARP with some people that are, out and outdoor kind of thing. Now you may have a bubble of people that you're, okay to be with. There's times when you could be. Right now, I would say that the risk is too high. I've shut down all of my small little bubble leagues. I actually did some bubble leagues. I did some over the summer, and then I did some over the fall too. And we just used certain precautions. And so I'll talk a little bit about that in case you have a group of friends that are in a bubble or like a school situation where you guys all are, contained. If you want to know how could we actually LARP then? Well, you don't need to change a lot about the rules, actually. There's a few adjustments you need to make, like, we tend not to use, like, we allow people to use their weapons to tag people to first aid. So if you're using a sword, instead of usually you have to tag your hands and say first aid, we let somebody tag their sword and say first aid, because it gives you a little more distance from the person, so you don't feel like you're, there's any risk in terms of health and safety. We all wear masks when we're LARPing. And so that way, in case we're getting close to each other and talking about things, we don't, have any risk there. We also all wear gloves while we're LARPing. Now you might say, well, gloves, I mean, what's the point of the gloves? I don't mean plastic gloves. I mean, like, a cloth gloves, like, mittens. And you might say, well, why do that? Well, the main reason is, one, it reminds us all when we're wearing them to, think about our hands and what we've been touching. And so also, some people want to eat. And if you're wearing mittens, it's a good reminder not to put food in your mouth while you're holding your mittens. And so people won't do that. They'll tend to wash their hands more, take off their mittens and wash their hands and then eat and that sort of thing. We also don't bring any food to LARP that's not something you can eat with a fork and a spoon and like that. We don't eat any with our hands at all at LARP, because we know we've been touching things that could be be contaminated in some way. When we eat, we all sit apart, kind of a little ways away from each other, so that when we're eating, we're not, contaminating anybody. We're outside at the parks usually, or at a park that we reserved for that purpose. And so we have reserved space that we know the people are not supposed to be coming through or, in, so that they won't get contaminated also. And then, for all the gear, we're careful about if there's multiple little bubble groups, we actually break them up so that each group doesn't interact with the other group. So over the summer, I did some summer camps, and I'll probably be doing some more this summer too. And they'll probably use the same kind of bubble system, which is where you have about 12 kids who are all in one, field, little area of the field, and they have a GM who runs their campaign, and then I have another group of 12 people, and they're running a campaign with me. And then on another part of the field, there's 12 more kids, and they're all doing their campaign. And we don't interact with any of those other 12 groups. We just do LARPing and battling and sword fighting and everything with just those 12. So it's like 6-on-6 or 8-on-4 kind of battles like that. And that works out really well. In fact, as long as the levels are not too high, we found that to be fine and safe. Given that we're, outside, all masked up, wearing gloves, disinfecting things at the beginning, and not eating together. We would take a lot of precautions, and we didn't really have any problems throughout the whole summer or into the fall at our LARP events. Currently, we were shut down because of the levels are much higher now, and also because there's permits and all that kind of stuff that has to be done, and so that's a lot harder to do. All right, so any questions about if we were trying to do LARP, like actual live LARP with somebody, and how to make sure that you're doing it safely? Okay, then I will move on to the equipment and live and online stuff, and then we will wrap up there. So first of all, equipment, if you want to build stuff, just a reminder that you can build lots of things, and this is a great time, since you're home, to learn to make lots of cool weapons. Aaron brought a weapon that he was showing, and Aaron, can you hold that up for a second so I can see it really? Yeah, right. And he's got the same ring design, you can see on the handle there, like that, and he's got the nice cross guard on that one. This one doesn't have a cross guard. Aaron, is that a bamboo core? Bamboo? Yeah, okay, great. So yeah, bamboo, I really recommend bamboo. Bamboo is an awesome material. It's easy to cut, but it's super strong. It's flexible. Yeah, one thing people kind of sometimes worry about is like, oh, but like it's too thin, it's too breakable. You don't have to use just one piece. You can actually take a piece of bamboo that's pretty thin, if it's too thin, and you can then put another piece of bamboo next to it, tape them together, and that gets really strong. And then you can actually get a really nice, core for something. You can use all my staves, all my spears, axes, most of the stuff, the core is bamboo for most of the things that I make. The only things that aren't bamboo for me are the more complex specialty swords you can see in the background there. That's and all the swords that I designed that are those, the more high grade swords. Those are made with the tent poles from a dome tent. At least that's what they originally made of, the hollow fiberglass tubes. And you can get a ton of them by finding an old dome tent that, is maybe moldy or doesn't work anymore, or is broken in some way. And you can then, they have those stretchy rubber bands between them that allow you to make like a long pole out of those poles that you have for dome tents, and they're flexible. So you can pull them apart, and then if you cut that string, it'll all come apart into a bunch of little tiny segments of like 2-foot long pieces of fiberglass tubes, and then you can use those to make swords. And since they're so thin but very, very strong, you can make a really, really good sword out of that, and it almost never break. I've had a few of them break when people are really using them the wrong way, but they're very, very durable. So if you want to make swords, this is a great time to learn how to make them. You can go to the Family website to see a bunch of videos on how to make different types of swords. I use that blue camping mat foam to make swords. Aaron, question.
Do you have videos on how to make spears?
I don't know if I have videos on how to make spears. That is a good question. I can tell you right now, since you asked, a bit about spear making, and then maybe I'll put up one. Maybe I'll put up a video on spear making. But the basics on making a spear is, if you imagine this piece of bamboo is much bigger, right? So a much bigger piece, right? So it's a big spear, right? And then usually there's a thick end, and then there's a thin end. And I've debated using either end for spears. I've tried both, and I don't really have a definitive answer which one's the better end to use. My experience recently has been to put the thin end at the top and then kind of work that up. That's actually been what I've been doing, but either way, you have a chance that it'll break. So I can't say which one's the right way to do it. I've tried both, but whichever end you choose, you definitely need to pad it the same way you would a sword, like this, like with the big rubber padding on it. And then the first thing I do is I take actually a much thicker type of pipe insulation, much more like fun noodle, like this. And it's, you know, see, it's pretty big on the inside, right? So if you put that over bamboo, it's usually too loose. It doesn't fit really well. So the first thing that I do is I cut strips of foam and I tape them onto the side here, and I build up kind of a thick kind of, you know, point, you would say, like there. And it has to be thick enough that when I take my pipe insulation or my fun noodle, that it's kind of tight when it goes onto there, like we have to kind of squeeze it on. Then I would cut it, you know, to the length that I want the spearhead to be. And then I do a couple slits along the edges, and I get some Gorilla Tape and I tape them in, and then I wrap it around and I lock this onto the top. So you end up with a something like this, I guess, Aaron, where you've got like a piece of pipe insulation and you've got a top kind of like that, right? So there's this, you would lock this onto the top. And then that's like the spear point. I use open cell foam, you know, that stuff you get in couches, and I just cut out a triangle of it, or triangular prism, and you put that on the top with a little tape, and you cover that whole thing with just nice, good gray IPG gray duct tape, and you tape that all down onto the bamboo handle here. Then you would cover this with the smallest gauge actually pipe insulation you can get, which I think is the 3/4 inch copper pipe insulation. And you put that on the top here, and then you do locking steps, which I think there are lessons on doing locking in one of my axe videos, but it's the same process for a spear. You just lock it all the way down to the bottom, and then you've got a spear. Spear, by the way, Aaron, great question. Spear is one of the best weapons in the game. You know, there's a couple of equipment sets that that when I really want to like deal, like if I were doing like a battle league kind of situation, and I really want to like deal with, like, the odds are stacked against me, there's a whole bunch of really good players on the other team, and I have to pick one weapon to use, it's spear. because if I have a spear, you know, and I need to try hard, I can really wreck the other team if I have to. And spear is super versatile. Bow is a quick second. In a battle league scenario, bow can also be really, really effective. But bow is limited by your arrows. If you only have a few, usually you have 5 arrows when you start, and unless the opponents are shooting arrows at you, you can get shut out if you're using a bow. But a spear, you know, you never run out of spear. so I like the spear choice is a good one. All right, other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. All right, so that wraps up my class then. I am done. You have all the information that you need. Again, use this doc. Feel free to copy it and use all those activities. Do them yourself. Do them with your friends. Ask your friends to do some LARPing with you before you leave this call. I might take a look around and, you know, put a message, you know, message somebody, or try to say, hey, you know, I'm going to be doing some LARP too. Maybe you want to, you know, contact me, share a way to contact each other, or later at LumaCon, see if you can find each other. But I would recommend that. I don't know if there's resources for people to connect up, but you can also use the Fanwar website, and there's exactly a message board there, but there's definitely people that you can connect with on the, we have like Facebook and all that kind of stuff. Joe, did you want to say something here?
Just thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Christopher, Master of Fanwar, and thank you all for being here. And we'll see you in other venues in LumaCon.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, have a good one. And I hope you guys all are, learn a lot from your various other classes. I'm not sure if Karen, do you want to, are you going to be ending this meeting, or is that something I should be doing?
I am. So make sure you guys check out our website. We got some drawing prompts going on throughout the day. And at the end of the day, we're going to have a big finale with where you can share your experiences. So go ahead and register for that. That's on our website as well. And have fun, okay? Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you. It was great.